time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, my wonderful, amazing, beautiful Maturepreneur Mavericks. I'm Jeanette Anderson, your hostess with the mostest. And today I'm here with the fabulous Michelle Boyde, who's joining us from Florida, but is not from Florida, which you're going to hear soon as you hear her awesome accent. And we today are going to be talking about when you're not who you were or yet who you're becoming. Exploring the liminal space. Now, I know this is speaking to many of you because many of you might be in that in-between space of the not who I've been most of my life and not getting my value from where I have in the past, but not sure where I'm going. So if you are writing your next chapter, if you're in that in-between space, or if you're simply thinking that you can see there from here, then listen up, because this is going to give you some great soulful information as well as some practical tips on how to live in the liminal space, which is not always an easy place to be, is it, Michelle?
It is not. It is not. Hello, Jeanette. Thank you for having me on.
It's lovely to have you. And I'm going to give you, as always, the official bio of our guest, but then we're going to find out the juicy behind the scenes tidbits. I always try and get them to give me the most salacious information possible, but in this case, we'll just find out more about Michelle. And then we're going to launch into this topic of really taking a look at what does it mean to be in that space? How do you recognize it? And how do you navigate through it faster, working with your subconscious mind and other tools, the importance of desire, how to experience more of your potential. There's so many things we're going to touch on. So it's going to be an interesting, deep, and meaningful conversations today. So strap in, listen up, grab a tea if you haven't got one, or wine, or whatever your beverage of choice is. And let me tell you more about Michelle. Michelle Boyde is a registered master hypnotist for visionaries who've left exceptional careers to create on their own terms. Woman after my own heart. After exiting consulting 7 years ago, she's hypnotized over 1,000 people and created the Alchemy Sequence, a precision process that dissolves outdated identity and reveals the truest version of you, devoted to the liminal space between who you were and who you're becoming. Michelle works with those ready for real, energetically sustainable success. Her work fuses deep subconscious transformation with catalytic perspective shifts, opening a new vision of what's possible and clearing the way to build it. Okay, awesome intro. Well written, way to go. Okay, because some of them are really boring, but that one's got some great words in there. Catalytic perspective shifts, and love it. All right, so obviously you've got a good copywriter, or you are a good copywriter, and that all sounds quite intriguing as well. So welcome, Michelle. I'm glad you're here. So now tell us something about you no one would guess, maybe even your friends don't know. What's something that would surprise people?
What surprises people is when I tell them I used to be a professional shark photographer.
All right. Well, and tell people where you're from, your lovely accent.
So I am born in the UK, so you can probably hear I'm English, but I spent the last 11 years living in Australia, actually. So I have a bit of an Aussie twang, and here and there I might, say righto or something, but I can sound a bit Aussie in places. But honestly, I left Australia back in March and decided that life there was complete for now, even though I'm a citizen, I've got the passport, all of that stuff. And so a bit like yourself, I am somewhat nomadic at the moment, which I'm really enjoying.
Yes, awesome. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that nomad lifestyle decision as well. And so the reason I was saying, tell them a little bit about it, because yes, you can hear a bit of the Aussie twang. And I'm assuming that's where you were a shark photographer, because they have a lot of sharks there, right?
Actually, no. So there is a lot of sharks there, but I actually trained as a scuba diving instructor when I was 18. I was one of the youngest female instructors at the time. I went through university, and when I went through uni, I decided I wasn't yet ready to go into my kind of career as such. And I went and worked in the Bahamas as a shark photographer. So this was back when I was like 21, 22.
Oh,
so a long time ago.
And what did you do with your shark photography? Like, did you sell it to publications like National Geographic, or like how does one get paid to be a shark photographer?
So it was, and some of your listeners might know it if they've ever been divers, but I worked for Stuart Coves, which is one of the biggest dive centres down on Nassau, and they have a photo shop. It's the biggest photo shop connected to a dive centre in the world called FinPhoto. So I would do a lot of photography for tourists. We used to dive with sharks every day, but then I'd get put on these really random projects that would come in. So most of the underwater stuff that's shot in Hollywood is actually shot down there because of the water clarity. And I had other weird instances where we had some marine biologists come down who'd got these bits of equipment that, mapped the topography of the ocean. And I did all the video footage for that. So yeah, it was lots of underwater photography for random projects and people. It was fantastic. I loved it.
With sharks as myself, I've swam with great whites. I was in a cage, so I don't really consider that swimming with great whites. That's more like staring at them somewhat closely, but and have dived in Belize and Honduras and had some up close and personal time with sharks. But my most fun one was 5 nurse sharks that were fanned out, and they were laying on the bottom of the sand, and I sank down and had a camera, and I was like nose to nose with them and took a picture. Now, nurse sharks don't eat people, so it was all very safe and everything, right? But still quite slightly intimidating. Tell me just very quickly, because it's fascinating little aside. Many people would think that that's a very, very, very dangerous career. How was it? Was it very scary? Was it hard? Was it dangerous? Was it fun?
Oh, it was fun. But I love sharks. I really do. And I think, as you've experienced, it's very different when you're down in the water with them, especially at a same sort of level, than when you're watching them on Discovery, or if you're sitting on a surfboard. I feel very different when I'm sat on my surfboard to when I'm underwater. But they're like dogs, their mood changes depending on what's happening around them. When we had, stormy weather coming through, they'd be erratic. They were different in the mating period. And then other times they were super chilled, and you just like everything. You get used to their rhythms and falling in line with their rhythms. They're fantastic creatures. I mean, we could talk for an hour about sharks, which is probably not what your listeners want, but I honestly, I'm blown away by them.
Awesome. That's really cool. I love it. Well, I think that people and animals and the universe gives us back what we put out, right? And so if we put out fear and all of that, then we get that back. When I was traveling by myself through Central and South America, people would always say, "Oh, weren't you scared?" and stuff. And it's like, no, you're smart. You don't do stupid things. So, around sharks, you don't do stupid things. And in business or around people, you don't do stupid things, but you get what you expect and what you put out. And so if you're chill and, so forth, then they will be too. And so I think people are good. So I attracted good people when I was traveling. I didn't attract, people to take advantage, because that's not my perspective of humanity. So I think we get a lot of what we expect. So let's talk about how you got into this work. So what was your path? What was your journey to this? Because one doesn't just simply leap into the liminal space. So how did you get here?
So if we rewind back 7 years ago, because it's actually 7, so what we're record. So in 11 days, it's 7 years since I left my career.
Okay.
So used to be in consulting, used to work with C-suite around, if this is the business strategy, what's the culture we have to drop it into to be successful? Decided it was time to leave that world. It didn't feel that it was really what I wanted to be doing on a number of levels. And I stepped away into what was a liminal space. I didn't actually know what was next. I knew I was no longer going to be the consultant in that sense. And I actually wasn't entirely sure what the new version of Michelle looked like. And it was that very kind of exploratory space. Right. And I ended up stumbling across hypnosis. It wasn't something that I planned to become a master hypnotist. It sort of happened. And it was one of those real experiences that I think a lot of people have, which is when you suddenly start doing something else, you get that real sense in your body of this is the thing. And I've worked with so many people on different aspects with hypnosis over the years. But what is this continuous unifying thread is that they're all becoming another version of themselves. And there is this weird in-between space when you feel very, very between versions. You know that you've shed a lot of that old stuff. And you kind of, if you look back at that version of yourself, you don't recognize yourself in he or she anymore. But you are not yet there where you're next going to. And so, that is really my work, is doing the subconscious side, the somatic side, the body side, because that's the bit that people often don't think about. They go to strategy, tactics, the cerebral aspect of how do I create my next self? And they miss that part. But I also do a lot of work around energetic capacity and also genius, because that is very often what is really needed to support you to step into that next version of yourself.
Cool. Okay, we'll talk about genius as well, and finding that piece of it. But talk about hypnosis a bit, because a lot of people, when they hear that word, they think stage hypnosis and I'm going to cluck like a chicken and so forth. So talk about hypnosis and what it means to you and how you use it in the world.
Yeah, and I actually... always part of my work is educating people about what it is not. And you've hit the nail on the head there, I have to say. But what it fundamentally is, and it makes it sound a lot less sexy, is it's a process to get you into a specific brainwave state, which is theta, that's the hypnotic state. And then once we get you there, what we're able to do is actually dissolve old neural pathways and put in the new ones of the person you're becoming. So it's actually got 97% success rate. So it's a really, really effective modality, if you want to call it that. It's based in neuroscience, and it isn't this sort of woo-woo thing that some people dismiss it for. And it's very, very powerful. What I use it for is actually going in and getting your body on board with what you're doing next. Because what you will discover is, and people will talk in terms of limiting beliefs, and most people are quite well versed these days. If there's someone who's involved in kind of a growth mindset and they're always advancing themselves and developing themselves, if they've ever worked with exec coaches, etc., they're going to have a good concept of limiting beliefs. But there's stuff rooted down in your body which you're holding on to, and hypnosis is a great way to get to those parts. Because when you decide, if your listeners are deciding, I'm going to start my own business, I'm not done with this next phase of my life, there will be a part of their body that is perhaps going to be rejecting of that next decision or that next vision. And we actually need to get that part of the body on board. And so when you're, if you're listening to this and if you are developing this next stage of your career, one piece of advice I'd have is be really mindful of what's happening to your body. And you might notice that as you leave a career, you might find that some of your aches and pains, if you've got any, disappear, as your stress goes, or perhaps some of the misalignment with the old career starts to fall away. And then as you start to form this new vision for your career, your business, whatever that looks like, notice what happens in your body, because you might suddenly develop an ache or a pain or a rash, or suddenly something's happening with your digestive system, or
chronic cough.
Could even be a cough. And your body, which is the much bigger part of the system, has got a message for you. And then once you receive that message and you resolve that message, you'll find you move forward much more quickly.
Okay, so there's about three things that I want to unpack there. So go back to neural pathways. It dissolves neural pathways. So talk about what that means, because there are some people who are going to hear this and think, well, you can't just do that like that. And what does that mean, and how does that work?
So the first thing I'd say is, neuroscientists call them neural pathways. Hypnotists, we call them programs. Same thing. So we have a program for everything, right? You've got a program to beat your heart, for you to breathe, secrete your hormones, and you've got programs for your behavioral responses, the way that you see the world, the way you move through the world. And what we do in hypnosis is we are able to go in and put in a more resourceful or a better program. And the way the brain operates, and you experience this all the time because it's learning. So hypnosis is really just subconscious, accelerated learning, is every time you learn something new, you start to build a program for that new thing. And then over time, what happens is your brain goes, oh, we don't need that old program because we don't do it that way anymore. We're now doing it this way. And it starts to build actually a protein sheath around that program and lock it in as part of your new identity. So what we're doing is we're moving you away from using old programming, and we're moving you into better programming, or more correct programming for the person you're becoming, if that makes sense.
It does. Fascinating. And I know so what goes through my head is it sounds like a conscious process, but I know that it's work that happens often at a subconscious level. And as much as I do this work, and I have been for a long time, there's still part of me that says, well, how do they know what goes on in the subconscious? Because it's invisible. And how do they know we have all these thoughts and things that go on down there? Because no one can see it and track it and so forth. And so talk a little bit more about the subconscious and how we know these things are working in there and discovered them and so forth.
Well, the way that you'll know it's working is your experience will shift. And so you will feel different. You'll find yourself having different thoughts. You will find yourself experiencing things different in situations that you've been in before, and you've had a different experience. But the way that we hear it, the way we find it, is that you're actually giving off cues. So there is language that comes out. You will, I just need to listen to people and I can hear their patterns coming through. But the other piece is, as I said before, it's the body. The body is the subconscious, and the subconscious is the body. So, people, when they hear conscious mind, subconscious mind, and it's not up here, it's actually conscious mind and body. And so your body is communicating all the time. If you find that you've never got the energy for something, it's because your body doesn't want to do it. I'm oversimplifying, but that will be the case. And so it's giving you a message about something in this scenario is not correct. So if you set your business up with a certain product or a certain method of delivery, and yet you never have the energy for it, and yet, you're getting sleep, you're eating well, you're moving your body, you're doing all the tick box stuff, then your body is saying something about this isn't right for us. There's something we don't like about it. And so this is why you've got all of these clues in your body. And this is how we get in there. It's communicating to us all the time.
Love it. And I haven't heard the distinction put that way, that there's the conscious mind and then the subconscious, which is the body. But when people say subconscious mind, you often think it's just an invisible mind that we can't access. And but the body does give us information. So speaking of messages from the body, how does one learn how to interpret what those mean? And how do we listen better to our body? So, for instance, very concretely, I've been spending lately doing my best to try and figure out what the hell is going on with my body. I have had a bad flu, turned into ear infection, throat infection, et cetera, and chronic persisting cough and tons of phlegm. So I decided to consciously frame all the phlegm as the limiting beliefs coming out and getting expelled. But there's all this going on and has been for a while, and I am not able to hear what that message is. Sometimes I can. Sometimes I know what my body is telling me, but in this case, it's not talking in a way I'm hearing. Probably mostly because I'm just really annoyed with it and tired of this. It's been a couple of months. I'm stepping up into a larger phase of my business, committing to playing a bigger game. So my assumption tends to be that if stuff comes up, it's that fear is expressing itself, but that's my default assumption. How do we know what our body's trying to tell us? How do we listen to it? How do we interpret it?
So if you want the really nuanced version that's entirely personal to you, you need to ask it. And, outside of pulling someone like myself in to work with you on that, if I want to give your guests like a really practical way of doing it, you're not going to hear it when you're in this brainwave state. Yeah. So when you sit here, we're in beta right now because you're focused on me and I'm focused on you. So when you sit down and you're very logical state and you go, okay, body, tell me, why have I got this cough that I can't get rid of? You're not going to hear it. You're going to need to slow your brain waves. So if you don't know how to take yourself into hypnosis, then the next best bet is take yourself into, it's kind of a deep alpha. So we're in beta right now. We slow your brainwaves a bit, you go into alpha. We slow them further, we go into the hypnotic state, which is theta, and you've got delta below that. So the best way for your listeners without any training to slow their brainwaves enough is just sit quietly with your eyes closed, count backwards from 100 to 0. By the time you do that, you're going to be sitting in you're going to be in an alpha state. If you're already a meditator, you can use that. You've already got some ability to slow your brain waves. And then what you want to do is you want to focus in on that part of your body, and you just want to ask it and see what comes up. That would be my starting point for advice, and really start to tune into the awareness of your body. The reality is that pretty much all of us, and very successful people in particular, have become successful from living here upwards. And I have been as guilty as this as anyone else, so it's not a criticism. So we are not good at tuning in to what's happening below our necks and not intellectualizing what is happening below our necks. And the more time you get used to shifting your awareness below your neck and feeling the nuances in your body, you start to naturally tune into it.
Yeah, love that kind of distinction. And what did you say was the one below theta? I didn't hear you.
A delta. So that's kind of a deep sleep. So when you go into like REM sleep, you're partly in theta and you're partly in delta.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned getting the next stage is getting your body on board with the changes. So is that a process of putting in those programs that are more supportive, more affirming or positive about moving in that direction? Is that what you're talking about when you're saying getting your body on board?
Yeah. So whatever the objection is, working with that objection. It could be actually a very practical external objection. It might not want to get up and do intense work before 10 a.m. It could be something simple like that. Or it might be some deeper nuances around how you see the world and the beliefs that you have about what you're doing. And so then we would be looking at moving them into a more resourceful place. So it depends a little bit on what it is.
So let's give us a couple of quick mini case studies of work you've done with clients of what was the presenting problem or issue or change that they wanted to make, what was the reprogrammed or new program, and how did that translate in terms of their being?
Yeah, so I was one client I was working on. So she was already a successful business owner, but she was in this place where she wasn't loving the business that she had, and she couldn't tap into what was the changes that she wanted to be making with it. So we pulled up her desire. So we always start with desire. Your desire is so important. And that would be one tip I'd give people is don't dismiss your desire, because actually everything your body, everything your subconscious is going to be doing or not doing and responding is going to be in relation to the desire. So it's almost our starting point to really declare that desire, own that desire, and then see what the body does. And so we bring up her desire and we start to notice what's happening in her body. And what's starting to happen in her body is that she's starting to get this sort of burning sensation down in her heart because she wasn't owning the desire. And she starts to get this weird sensation that is sitting between her heart and her mouth, because what she wasn't doing was she wasn't digesting, which that sits actually in digestion, even though it feels further up your body. And she wasn't vocalizing the things that she wanted. Also, when we look into human design, we see that intuition is really, really key for her. And actually the block between the intuition, between her heart and her expression was this bubbling that was happening, this sensation that was happening in her throat. So we sat with her throat. We actually started to shift the sensations, give it the awareness that it needed and the presence that it needed. And then what we did was we did lots of reprogramming for her to actually support her tapping into her intuition. And so she's now at this stage, and she's a projector in human design, if you're familiar with human design. And she is receiving invitations left, right, and center, and now being able to better refine how this all fits together. So she's tapping into her intuition, and we've actually completely shifted what she's doing business-wise into something else completely. So, that is one area. I've got another client that I've been working with recently, and she's had constipation for all the decades of her life, this really, really strong constipation. And she's leaving this really kind of high-powered tech career and working out. So she's one of those people, she's left without an idea. She's like, I'm going to explore what happens next. And actually, when you go into constipation, if anybody's suffering that, what that tends to be, it's very often shame is the emotion that creates constipation. And it's usually old emotional hurts that you've not resolved. So we have been doing this hypnotic work where we're actually cleaning out the shame. And we have been going through these big emotional hurts in her past and releasing those. And this is what's interesting, is when you start to make these shifts in your body, it shifts your perception. It starts to shift the ideas that you have, and you start to tap into these parts of yourself. And so it might sound like a leap, potentially, if you're listening to this, to me, like we do something in your body around constipation, and then you're going to get clearer on what your business idea is. You might be like, how do those things even link? But it is all linked, because when you shift emotions, you shift these old things in your body, you start to open up capacity in your body, which allows new things to actually start to move. And the reality is that if you're past 40 and you haven't actively worked through some of your emotional stuff, some of your experiences, it's all in your body sitting somewhere. It's like having a house that you never clean and you just let stuff stack up around the house. You find it harder to find stuff. You find it harder to move around in it, to get the best out of the space. And it's exactly the same thing that happens in our bodies.
That's a great analogy. So when you were talking about constipation, often connected to shame, that sounds like the work of psychoneuroimmunology, the field of the mind-body connection that was popularized by Louise Hay. Is that some of what you're referencing, or?
Yeah, her work's fantastic. And if you pull up those, symptoms and you can find them if you Google them, they will give you a starting point as well for you to start to explore what stuff means to you. Yeah.
And if you're listening and you haven't heard of Louise Hay, she popularized the scientific field of psychoneuroimmunology by creating a very accessible guide of what the connection is between different physical challenges or issues and what it might be related to, like constipation is related to shame and old childhood wounds and so forth. So Louise Hay, go look it up. Heal Your Body is her primary book. Or just go and talk to Michelle. So let's talk about desire, because that's one of the issues and challenges for a lot of people in transition and in the later stage in life, is many are coming from this whole lifetime of so you go to school, then you go to university, then you get a good job and you get married and you have 2.5 kids and a white picket fence, and then you work there forever, and then you retire, and that's life. Now that's such a, that's so 1800s, but 1950s, and so not the case, but it is that notion that we have still, and many people don't know what their desires are. They get to this point and they haven't put their desires front and center most of the time, particularly that's the case for a lot of women. And so when I say, what do you want? What makes you happy? What gives you pleasure? What are your desires? You often give me the deer in the headlights look and do the dog tilt head thing, and or look panicked, stricken, or they might be able to say one or two things and then they get stopped. What's your talk a little bit more about desire, and how do we figure out what the desires are at age and stage, not choosing from the past of what we think we should desire?
100%. And what you just described is so accurate. And you might find this as well, that often when you ask somebody what they desire, what do you really want, they turn around and tell you what they don't want.
Yes.
And sometimes the want is the opposite of the don't want, but it always isn't always. So most people know what they don't want. They often don't know what they do want, which is one of their big blocks. So one of the starting points I always talk about is let's define your definitions of success, and let's look at which are yours and which are someone else's. Because from a subconscious perspective, a definition of success is something that you are subconsciously marking your performance against all the time. And this is important not just for understanding what you want, but it's important because you will actually berate yourself against these definitions of success if you don't achieve them. And you would pick so much of this up from society, and like you say, a lot of this almost roadmap that we kind of head off down is those definitions of success. And the way that we can understand sometimes if a definition of success is not correct for us is there's a couple of ways. One is you will achieve the definition of success and you will sit back and you'll go, is this all there is?
Is this all there is syndrome? Yes.
Then That wasn't actually your definition of success.
Mm.
And then the second one is that somehow you will never seem to get there. Doesn't matter whatever you do. And that will be your subconscious going, we do not want to go down this path because this is not ours. And so it's worth reviewing your life up to this point in both of those particular areas. And it's not about going, was this wrong? Have I taken the wrong path? But it's about the nuance in it. And so I'll give you an example of this. If you take a cultural definition of success that's massive in the UK, massive in Australia, and it's pretty big in the US as well, is owning a home, right? You are a success if you own your home. If you are still a renter, then you're not quite as successful, right? Yeah. And I bought a flat in London when I was 28, did it all on my own. I was very kind of in my super independent woman stage at that point. And so I bought the flat, and then I decorated the flat. I even did a what do you call it, all these doves that were flying off. Yeah. And I sat back, or feature wall, it's a feature wall. Yeah. And I sat back and I looked at this flat that I had bought on my own, I decorated on my own, and I realized that it wasn't doing it for me. Now, did it make financial sense? Yes. Was it still a good choice financially? Yes. But it didn't make me joyful and happy. And this is the thing, when you're onto the right things in your life, it's not going to be about your value. It's going to be about, does it make me joyful? Does it make me happy? And so also the advice I would give to someone who is sitting there and they're struggling is tap back into the things that make you laugh, that give you energy. Your desires will always give you energy. If it's not yours, you just won't find the energy for it. Because if you think about the things that you really desire, like if you've got somebody in front of you that you want to kiss, the person you desire and you love, you never have to find the energy to kiss them. It's always there, right? Especially, those beginning stages of a relationship, that's true desire. And your desires in regards to the next stage of your career or business are going to do the same things. If it feels heavy and tiring to start that, it's not yours.
Right. Love that definition and the example about wanting to kiss someone. I was like, whoo, got tingles on that one. And I really appreciate the distinction around it's not necessarily about your values, it's about the joy. Because it may fit your values, right? Like it's a good investment. And being prudent with money might be a value of yours. But if it doesn't make you joyful, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's your desire. So, and that can be confusing for people because it makes sense is such a great detractor from, yes, but is it what I want, right? Is it what makes me happy? Is it, because I've lived a very, what I call a story life. And many people, including myself, have judged me for doing things that weren't necessarily as prudent. So selling my house and everything I own because I wanted to live a mobile lifestyle. And I couldn't do that with the house. Not the best financial decision, but it was the best lifestyle choice for me. The thing that made me happy and look back on my life and go, oh, thank God I did that. And was more in alignment with who I was. Would it have been smarter economically to keep the house? Yes. Was it my desire was? No. And so sometimes we really have to get out of the right, wrong, good, bad, and into what do I want? How do you, because that can be a real challenge for people to make that leap from what I should be, do, and have to what I'm going to allow myself and give myself permission to be, do, and have. How do you help people make that transition?
So it's really about owning unapologetically what you want. So you will notice there will be a distortion a lot of the time between somebody will say, I want this thing, whatever the thing is. And then you actually watch the things that they later say, the actions that they take, the way they move themselves through the world. And if we were truly honest, if somebody was watching you for a couple of days, would they know that was your desire? And so owning your desire is not just sitting here and saying, oh, I want to start a business, in this stage of my life. It's like, are you taking the actions? Are you owning those things? And it's about using your body. This is the embodiment piece because you're so true. People it's a rational, logical decision so much of the time. Whereas when your body's behind it, it's going to get on board. It's going to be doing the things. We talk about passionate leaders and, passionate business owners, and you want to be passionate about what you do. Passion doesn't exist without desire. Mm-hmm. If you want to initiate passion, you always got to initiate desire. Again, I love to go to romantic relationships and sexual relationships, because I think there's we can all tune in and get it. You never have passionate sex with someone unless there is desire first.
Right.
You have to initiate desire to get to passion. And it's exactly the same if you're going to start a business. You want a passionate business, you've got to initiate it from desire. And if you don't, if you go the completely logical route, then you will probably find that you lack the energy to do it. And then you'll tell yourself a story about the stage of your life you're in. That might be to do with age. It might be because of the age of your children. It might be, for whatever else. And you'll tell yourself that's the reason that you're not getting it off the ground. But it will quite likely be because you're just not desiring it as much as you need to.
Yep. I wrote down action is embodied desire. I think that's a really interesting perspective and distinction I haven't heard before. One of the things you mentioned here is how to use desire to experience more of your potential. What does that mean? How do we find out more about our potential from what we desire?
Yeah. So you will hear a lot of people say, I want to find my purpose. Mm-hmm. And that can, and you get this with people of all sorts of ages. Often the reason they leave a career is I want a more purposeful and meaningful life. Mm-hmm. I say, just forget about purpose. And the reason I say that is because it can become really heavy. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of perceptions about what purpose is and how you create purpose. And back in my consulting career, a lot of what I did was actually help businesses develop their purpose statements and activate them through their people. So it's an area I know a lot about. So I say, leave purpose because you're making it too difficult for yourself. Focus on your potential. Because if you prescribe to the idea that you have a purpose, then you must prescribe to the idea that you were given the potential to fulfill that purpose, right? So we start to come back into our potential. And the way that we access our potential, which is everything from our genius, and it requires us to tap into our energetic capacity, as well as our capability, our experience, our expertise, it comes back to desire, because it's desire that opens up potential. Because again, you wouldn't be given this area for yourself to focus in if it wasn't going to be enjoyable. I prescribe to this idea that the things that we're supposed to do in life are not supposed to be really heavy and painful.
Yeah. I often say purpose is on the path to pleasure.
Yes, love it.
On the path to our pleasure. I really like the framing of potential includes our genius, our expertise, our energetic ability, and those other things you mentioned, that it is all of those things wrapped up, because potential can often be heard as this blank space that we have to live into and create and live up to, rather than the amalgamation of what already is, which makes it a lot more accessible, and not something that is this, you have to live up to your potential. It's like, well, I'm already living my potential. This is it. This is me. Yeah. In my experience and my genius and so forth, or at least to some degree. So we talked about the using desire as a way to kind of tap into that more and express it, and making that shift, some of which was about really permission to be, do, and have what we want, to permission to be happy, to let pleasure guide us, to let our joy be the thing that is the measure of success, perhaps. Let's apply that practically to the shift from being an employee to an entrepreneur, for example. Because from my perspective, I want to end ageism through entrepreneurship, and I believe that entrepreneurship is, first of all, the best personal growth course you can ever put yourself through, and B, is really a way to live into our gifts, our purpose, our potential, our pleasure, all of those things. It's a wonderful way to express all of that. So talk about how do we make that shift, because that can be a really tricky shift, both in terms of thinking and mindset, what people call mindset, but also energetically, it's a very different way of being in the world.
It is. And I want to offer a bit of a framework for this, for your listeners. And this is something you can actually map out what I'm saying and stick it in these boxes and see what sits. So I want you to imagine that we have a chart. So we've got a y-axis, which is energy, and we've got an x-axis, which is time. Okay. And this is also going to be useful if you find yourself saying things like, I don't have time to do something, right? So we've got our 4 quadrants. So down in the bottom here, where we've got low energy and we've got low time, is where we've got the things that are unimportant. So this is the stuff that we never get to, and you can just totally disregard this box, right? Mm. We come along the x-axis over here, where we've got high time, low energy, is you've got your obligations. So this is the stuff that we don't necessarily have the energy for. We don't love it, but we always make the time for it. It's our musts, our shoulds, our need to. And if you are leaving a career and you are starting a business, I want you to look in this box in a lot of detail, because what everybody does is they carry over obligations from their previous career into the way they run their business. And this will be in terms of the way that they have to deliver and execute. It will be process things that you perhaps have done for 30 years in your career because that was always the way it was done, but you don't actually have to do those things when you run your business. It might be the way you deliver something. You don't have to do it that way. You've always delivered something through sitting on Zoom, and actually you don't want to sit on Zoom, and you realize there's a different way for you to deliver it. Really look at the obligations. Then sitting above obligations, where we've got high time, high energy, is our priorities, right? We always have the energy for them. We always create the time for them because they're a priority. What I say is that people who build their business and their life focused on priorities and obligations, which is most people, live a somewhat ordinary life. Yeah. It's this constant tug of, I must do this, and then this is important. The final quadrant is where we've got low time and high energy. This is desire, right? Most people they've always got energy for their desires, but they do not make the time for these things. When you build your business in those top 2 quadrants of priorities and desires, that's where you experience your potential. And that's where you start to create something extraordinary that is just your own. And what you start to experience is this feeling when you will hear people talk about collapsing time. This is where you feel that you collapse time and you have enough time. Because when you are in desire, when you're in that stuff that is super important, you will go into this state where what you produce and how you produce it is so much more efficient. And so I would map out where your business ideas or the way you want to operate your business in this quadrant and go, how do I do more of priorities and more of desire and less obligation? Because a lot of obligation is stuff, again, we think we have to do, but actually when you start to shift your perspective, you realize I don't need to do it or do it that way. And that's the joy of running your own business, right?
Right. Potential joy, because many business owners live in the obligation quadrant, driven by shoulds and have tos and so forth. This is freaking brilliant. Did you create this? Is this from someone?
I did. No, this is 100% mine. This is proprietary stuff. This is mine. Okay.
This is brilliant. Where can people get an article on this or more data on this, information on this?
It's not, I don't have it written down anywhere, actually. Okay. I have it on stuff in my world that you can purchase, but it's not out there floating around in the world. Okay,
but do you have a book that it's in, or is there an article, or no?
Not yet, but maybe I need to stick it in an article and I'll share it with you.
Okay, I tell you, well, no, girlfriend, this needs to be a lead magnet. This is a brilliant lead magnet and a really great processing framework is what I call these, right? And I'm like, this is exactly what I can see incorporating this idea into a workshop, of course, attributed and with permission. But it's a really great distinction for being able to clarify, where am I at? People love doing these kind of little quizzes as well, really. And I know you've got a different quiz we'll talk about, but this needs to be a lead magnet.
I'll pop it in another lead magnet. And I do have a page on my website, which just says start here. It's a big blue button and everything on there is resources and things you can get. So I will pop it on there, but I will create it and I will share it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that reflection back. It should go magnet.
It's a really great way for people to just really check in. Where am I living? Which quadrant am I in? And is that where I want to be? Is that the place that's in line with me? When I get to the end of my life, am I going to be happy that I spent all my time there? Or my time there? It's a really great reflection tool and choice tool and framework. So yes, brilliant. Oh, they're so smart. I like smart women. For people in general, but especially
Me too.
yeah. Okay. So, making that transition from employee to entrepreneur, what are some of the biggest mindset shifts that people need to make, and or choices? So, obviously, shifting this quadrant that they're in, and thinking about it from that perspective. But is there anything else that you needed to change when you went from being a consultant to, which is still somewhat of an entrepreneur, but but in corporate, with that kind of corporate mindset, to being a full-time entrepreneur?
Gosh, I think there's lots of things, and I think we could talk about this for a long time. One thing I would say is possibility. You need to change your relationship to possibility. And, if you're somewhere in the corporate world, innovation is spoken about endlessly, and, we all know the expressions. It's about, failing fast and creative thinking and all of that. But if we're truly honest, what sparks innovation is this idea that there's a different possibility. And that's really where I think you have to start from if you want to build a business, is there is a different possibility. And it might be a different possibility for an outcome for whoever you serve. It's a different possibility in the way that you deliver it. And it's a different possibility for how you experience it. And this is the bit that, I love working on people with, and I call it, energetically sustainable success, is because we are told to work hard. We are told it's 40 hours plus. If you really want to have a, successful business, it's a lot more than that. And actually, there are different possibilities for the way that you can work, operate, and use your energy, because that energy is all completely different. And so if you can start to look at your relationship to possibility, because also the thing for us to check ourselves on is, and, as we get older, we've seen a lot, we've learned a lot, we've seen what's worked, not what has worked. And so we start to form this slightly more rigid view of what's possible and what's not. And, we call it realism. And the risk is that the focus of your business ends up being based on realism, and it doesn't tap in enough to possibility. And remember that realism is about what's real, and what you know to be real is what's happened previously. Yeah. And you can do something different, it's going to be different. So look at possibility.
I really think that's great. And I often, when people say real, I say, oh, you mean when you take the past and throw it on the future? Because that's what we're doing. And we're not leaving the future open for something other than what we knew from the past. So really developing a relationship to possibility, it's on one hand kind of this vague notional thing, but it also lights up something inside me that, oh, what a juicy thing that is, to develop that relationship.
And so again, if people are listening going, hey, that's lovely, Michelle, oh, possibility, how do I start to work out where I might be closing down possibility? This is a way you can do it. I want you to identify the beliefs that you have made facts. Now, every single human being does this. And I have so many examples of this from, my work with C-suite over the years. And so let me give you one, for example. So I was working with the directors of this construction firm in Australia. I've worked with a number of the big construction firms in Australia. When you sort of get into an industry and then you seem to work with everybody. Anyways, this particular, I was sitting with them and we were talking about mental health in construction. And one of the directors said, construction is the most stressful industry. And this is how you will know that you've made something a fact, is because when someone challenges you on it, you will stamp your feet to protect it. You will also say things like, with all due respect, Michelle, you don't work in construction. You don't know the reality of all of these things, right? And the problem with this, so it isn't the most stressful industry. It is a stressful one. But if you talk to a dentist, if you talk to a lawyer, they'll also tell you it's the most stressful industry. Is that because this is made a fact, what ends up becoming possibilities shrinks. So then when you start to look at what the construction industry does for mental health, they have the best intention, but everything they do is a sticky plaster solution, right? It's meditation apps. It is mental aid, first aid, people in the business. It's Are You OK Day, which is a big mental health day in Australia, etc. And it's best intention, but none of them solve the actual problem, because what we are saying when we say construction is the most stressful industry is we are predisposing that it's always present because it's the most stressful one. And therefore, if I was a business leader, why would I waste my resources and energy trying to eradicate it? because it's always going to be there. And so you need to start, and we do this all the time. What have we made a fact that is actually just a belief? And so, again, if people want to go away, what is the stuff that you find yourself repeating that if somebody was to challenge you on, you'd assume it's because they didn't know as much as you and that they would fight for it? And, you've only got to look at, social media and go into the comment section, and you will see people flinging their beliefs at each other in the name of it being a fact. And it's not a fact. It's your perception of the world. And that's totally valid, but don't let it contain you and keep you stuck.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, okay. Another brilliant perspective and very practical takeaway too is to take a look at where we are entrenched in something that's a belief, but we consider it the capital T truth. You mentioned previously energetically sustainable success. So that's something that, again, as you get older, energy is a premium, is something that we really both value and sometimes have a little less available. So how do we create energetically sustainable success at any age, but particularly for those who may not have quite as much or the same form of energy? Like I work 20 hours a day. And fortunately, I'm wise enough to not choose to, but how do I create sustainable success?
So it's really individualized. And this is the thing, is we have been taught a way to work when we work for other people. And the key is to not just pick it up and bring it over into your business. And before I keep talking, I just want everyone to notice how if you think about people in your life, they have different energy levels and their energy feels different. You've got some people who seem to go and go and go and go, and it doesn't seem to affect them. You've got other people who seem to need extended periods of rest, or people who can be alone, or people who seem to be good when they're doing that activity, but then when they start doing that, it wears them out. We aren't all the same. And so one of the systems that I use for energetically sustainable success is actually looking at people's human design. And so if your listeners aren't familiar with human design, you can get your chart free on my website as well. It's your energetic, it's a blueprint of your energetic potential. And we all have different energy. Now, there's so many layers to this, and depending on these different flavors to your energy would inform how you structure your business differently. But I can give you just one, which is the tip of the iceberg, but to give you a flavor. There's 5 different types in human design. And so if you're vaguely familiar, we've got manifestors, projectors, reflectors, generators, and manifesting generators. Now, they all have a different energetic role. So, for example, I'm a projector. Mine is to guide. So when I'm in the energy of guiding in my business, that comes very easeful and very natural to me. And I can keep doing that. But for example, a manifestor whose energetic role is to initiate. So these are the people who have an idea, galvanize other people into action, right? I can kind of create that energy if I need to, but it's not my natural state. So if you can actually create a business where the main thread of it is your energetic role, and as I say, this is one of many dimensions, you will find that you have that energy readily available. It's like your home energy in a sense. So our generators are the builders, the creators. If you're a generator, you actually have this access to this constant energy. So what happens is you wake up, and as long as you've looked after yourself, it's there. You can work all day. You go to bed, you sleep well, you wake up, and it starts again. Projectors are only meant to work 20 hours a week. So my business model is not a 40-hour week business model because I make more money when I build in rest. So you can, and as I say, tiny bit of it, but if you start to actually look at the energetic profile of who you are, and we're all different, and build your business that way, it's sustainable, and it's energetically sustainable success.
Brilliant. I love that. And I love the distinction. As you were talking, I was thinking of my friend Patricia, who I'm not sure what the models are, so I want to find out more about human design. But part of her slowing down is that she's just come through cancer and is now healed, in remission, whatever. But she's finding that her body has a different set point now. She needs more rest than she used to. But she is the quintessential Energizer bunny. And one of the things that's been challenging for her is readjusting to, I'm not who I was or who I knew myself to be and where I got my value from. And so how do I adjust that? And I suspect that some of that is really kind of getting clear on the modified version of her human design and the energetic version of how to live into that energy, that maybe being the Energizer Bunny and being, driven all the time like she was, now looks a little different. Like the format of it looks different, or how she does it looks different. So I think that's a really smart framework to look at what works for me in terms of how I'm building my business. I was trained to be driven, and that's not sustainable, for one thing, but it's also not my forte. It's not do it. I've done it for decades, but almost always at my detriment, right? And so really understanding what does work for us. Does it work to work 20 hours a week, or does it work to be, that generator? I love this conversation. For you, I love that we're having these kind of I'm really hoping that those of you who are listening are getting things sparked. I've got a page and a half of notes, which I seldom have, frankly, from my guests. So of new ideas, of things to pursue, of things to write blogs about, of things to create posts about, of things to incorporate in my workshops, and of things for me to explore personally. So thank you. That's the sign of having someone around that is educational and also really transformational, because transformational is about who we're being. Educational is about what we're doing. And this has been a being and doing conversation, which are my favorite kind. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
You have a gift for people. Speaking of quizzes, tell us a little bit about your liminal archetype quiz.
Yes. So this is for you if you do feel like you're in that in between. You're like, I'm not that person and I'm not yet that person yet. What this quiz will do is it will identify which of the liminal archetypes you are. And the value of this is you will then know how to collapse that space faster to become the person that you want to be. So it's on my website. So, the link will be obviously in the vault and provided by Jeanette, but it's Michelle Boyde, and my Boyde has an E on the end, .com/liminal archetype quiz. You can go in and take it. You'll be sent information, audios for you to understand where you are. And then you can see what you need to focus on to actually collapse that and step into this next version of yourself.
Great. I took it. I found it really enlightening and beautifully written as well. So very kind of soothing to my spirit when I was reading it. And so I highly recommend that you go there. So how you find that is we will put it in the vault. And the vault, if you haven't been listening before or haven't been here before, is a wonderful place for you to go and opt into. We have the link in the show notes and in the show description. And in it, you will find Michelle's information and also her social media, etc., and the link to this archetype quiz. But you'll also see all of the other speakers and their gifts. And what you can go and do is go and get all the various things that appeal to you or that support you at the stage you're at. Go in again and again, because we're always adding new guests and new gifts. So it's a way for you to go and have a mini Christmas and give yourself gifts that are going to support you with whatever you're doing. If you see an episode in there that appeals, you can click on the link and go to that episode. So it's a great way for you to navigate through whatever it is you're navigating through right now. So go to the vault, the link's in the show notes, and definitely go in and take Michelle's quiz if you are in that liminal space of transition. And I think most of you are, even if we are clear on what's next, even if there is that, I'm very passionate about this next iteration of my business. And I still am in that in-between space, because even though I am creating, it's not yet created. I'm not yet who I'm becoming. And, for most of us, that's an ongoing state. So we're always in the becoming. So it's a beautiful tool to support you. And I highly recommend, and I don't do this with all my guests, but I highly recommend that you connect with Michelle. And especially if you feel any resonance with what she's talking about, with where you're at. And if you want to tap into what are my desires, what do I want to become and do? Where am I getting stuck? What is my energetic best path to success that's sustainable? Then please connect with her. As you can tell, she's got an awesome heart and great skills. So connect with her to get supported, because making these transitions, these transformative leaps in our life are so much easier when done with someone who holds our heart and our hand and gives us a kick in the context. that supportive push, nudge, kick out of the comfort zone that we may be in, or the rut, aka a rut. So do reach out to Michelle, and thank you so much for being here, Michelle, and sharing your wisdom. For those of you who are listening, take action. Go get her human design information, go take the quiz, do something, write a list of your desires, listen to this again, and take down some of the exercises she encouraged you to do, so that you take action and move yourself closer to your purpose on the path of your pleasure. Go find that joy. Follow that thread. Follow the thread of your joy. So before I give you the last word, I just want to say to people, very soon we'll be coming out with the Clarity Compass, which is in part a journey to support you in this inquiry. It's about clarifying what is your vision for your next chapter in your life. How will that look when you create from that new space, not taking the past and throwing it on the future? What is your purpose? And my definition of purpose is more along the lines of what Michelle's talking about, our desire. My definition is what we're healing from the past and what we long for the future, for ourselves and others. It's not what we do. It's why we do what we do. And so we clarify that. And then what does that look like lived into now? Are you going to create a nonprofit, a side hustle, a business? Because many of us also need to create income and are still committed to creating impact. So if that's you, please watch for the Clarity Compass. They're coming up soon. Go to maturepreneur.world for further details, or reach out to me, send me a smoke signal, so that we can get you crafting the chapter that is going forward. We'll get you clear on the neck up and some of the heart down. And then you can go to Michelle to create those neural pathways that support you in creating that next step with success. So, Michelle, what's one last thing you'd like to leave people with? I know you've given lots of food for thought. We've gone over what I normally do, but you're just fascinating. What's one last thing you'd like to leave people with to encourage them on this journey, or if they may be in that liminal space?
So one of the biggest characteristics of the liminal space is that you feel that you are not good enough and you can't do it. And what it is, it's not that at all. It's almost like the visual I want to give you is when you watch a horror movie and you have that arm of the monster come up over the cliff and try to pull you back one last time. That is what your old subconscious program is trying to do. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I'm not cut out for this, not true. You just need some tweaks to your subconscious. It's all possible.
Awesome. Now I have the arm in my head. The arm getting me. Okay, so I've got a subconscious arm deflector that's going on there. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the work that you do. It's very soulful and practical, very strategic, and very kind of really pulls people to who they are meant to be. So that's important work in our world. Thank you, Michelle. And ladies and gentlemen, I know this has been meaningful for you because I found it extraordinarily insightful for me. So please share the episode as well. Pass it on to someone who if you have a notion, they might value or benefit from it. Chances are good they need to hear it right now. So please share this episode as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Have a bodacious week, everybody. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.